dear friends and colleagues. I'm very happy to be among you today. And the subject I'm going to talk about is extremely sensitive, as it can instigate conflicts, it can hurt feelings, and offend instantly. However, I have decided that I'd rather dare, as this is a gathering of language learners and language lovers, and the subject is xenophobia, but in the aspect of language learning. Xenophobia as a reason for foreign language anxiety, xenophobia as an obstacle to learning a new foreign language. So I'm pretty sure that all of you know what xenophobia is, but again, I would like to a little bit dwell on the term. Xenophobia is not exactly a phobia in its classical understanding of fear. Of course, it is fear, but it's more like a deep, profound dislike and even disgust to that what is strange or foreign nation, foreign people, foreign language, foreign culture, etc. And xenophobia is one of the reasons why people can't speak a foreign language, and even having enough vocabulary and grammar, they still can't overcome the fear, the anxiety, the stress to start actually speaking the language that they could if they were not xenophobic. For more than 15 years, I have been working as an interpreter in different UN agencies and other international institutions, and for the last 4 years, I provide a language counseling service to people with foreign language anxiety, to people who do not know how to overcome problems in language learning or speaking a foreign language. And after hundreds of hours of counseling, I can state that xenophobia is one of the most stubborn reasons, stubborn obstacles in language learning, because people hide this reason not only from the others, but also from themselves. One of the reasons of foreign language anxiety is suppressed xenophobia to the culture of the native speakers, to the culture of the speakers of your target language. And actually, hostility to foreigners is an ancient defense mechanism when one is trying to protect his or her integrity and inviolability of him or herself and his culture and his resources from strangers, from like foreign intruders, right? It is, according to the evolutionary psychologists, our genetic heritage. And, strangers, foreigners, others, them, all of it is perceived as a source of potential danger, as a source of evil, and you start feeding hostility to these people. Moreover, the brain refuses to be like those strangers, right? And tries to keep away from their language in order not to assimilate, in order not to become one of them and betray their own people. One may have negative emotional episode with only one representative of some certain nature, and thus develop this deep feeling of dislike and disgust to the whole nation. I will give you an example from my practice. It's a Turkish young man who resists learning Russian, who really is disgusted by the Russian language, though he needs it for job. So because his father at some point in the past, left his mom for a new wife who turned out to be a Russian speaker. On the other hand, one may dislike just vice versa individual representatives of a nation because of the general propaganda in the country. And a very picturesque example is the anti-Western propaganda in the Soviet Union that fueled the hostility of very many Soviet-originated people towards the English language, as English was considered to be a language of the alleged enemy, right? So the other point is that despite the fact that xenophobia includes not only ethnical factor, but also sexism, ageism, lookism, homophobia, dislike for people with disabilities or a group of people with a different occupation, still xenophobia is very often used as a synonym to nationalism or racism. And nationalism, racism are very highly criticized in the society. So people or person doesn't want to admit that he or she is xenophobic. And the reaction is like, oh, am I xenophobic? No. No. Am I nationalist? No. I love all the people. All people are equal. This is, by the way, a quote. I hear it very frequently. And then just 10 minutes through the 10 minutes later through the counseling session, it's like, oh, but if I speak English, you know, I will sound like those Anglo-Saxons. You know, I don't even want to quote. And look at the clash of the ideas and feelings inside this person's head. It certainly will create the foreign language anxiety. On the one hand, I feel bad about this nation. On the other hand, I need to speak their language, and I can't admit that any nation is bad because it is very much stigmatized in the society. So to discover this, you have to look very deeply into yourself and honestly answer the question, do I condemn the speakers of my target language merely based on the prejudgment about their ethnicity, religion, different traditions that they have? I will give you more examples from my practice that came up in the course of counseling sessions. For example, resistance to learning German, to learning the German language because of the memory of family pain and family losses during the Second World War, or Christians resisting to learning Turkish and Arabic because of the underlying fear of betraying their own religion, and vice versa. By the way, Arabs and Turks or Muslims that resist learning English and other languages that Christians speak. Resistance to learning Dutch because Netherlands is the land where homosexuality and drug abuse flourishes. Another example is very peculiar. It's a Turkish woman, one of my in-laws' friend, who's married to a Greek man, and they have been living in the United States for many years now. And she has been struggling to learn Spanish for several years, but she has failed. And she despises Latinos, and she even voted for Trump because she despises Latinos. She works internationally. She needs Spanish badly for her job. She needs Spanish badly for her life because her children's nanny is Latino, but because of this mental block, she can't move forward. She can't speak Spanish. And indeed, it takes deep inner reflection and personal courage to first spot and then admit that, yes, I do have xenophobia, I am xenophobic to some extent. And this is crucial because this is the first step to breaking free from the stereotypes and opening the gates to a foreign culture, and thus learning a foreign language. And you need to start by understanding that there is nothing abnormal in xenophobia. I'm not saying there is nothing wrong. There is nothing abnormal in this human evolutionary mechanism. Yes, this mechanism is archaic. Yes, it is outdated and it has failed to catch up with the rapid global changes in the cross-cultural communications, but it needs to be admitted. So, what are the possible solutions for xenophobia from the perspective of language learning? Well, first, as I have already said, it's bravery. Bravery to admit that you may be xenophobic to a certain extent. And, maybe this idea has never even come to your mind before. Maybe it would be quite new, because some people, they discover it inside with a lot of surprise. Like, oh, yeah, right. I think that Russian speakers are rude and, disgusting, and I dislike them. I don't want to be like one of them. And then oh, that's why I can't learn Russian. You're right. I don't want to be like one of them. Sometimes this revelation becomes very therapeutical in itself, and it can become a breakthrough. However, if this hasn't helped, there are certainly ways. So one option is to find an open-minded therapist who can help you deal with the issue of xenophobia and work on it together. It can be a psychologist, a psychotherapist, or a psycholinguist, any language counseling specialist who works both with the language issues and with the psychological issues. You can also work individually. It will require a great load of mindfulness, of course. You can start dealing with the fear of unknown in general, and you can do it by broadening your experience, by traveling, by trying new food, meeting foreigners and literally exposing yourself to a foreign culture purposefully and mindfully. And at the same time, you need to apply the conscious effort to replace the xenophobic thoughts and ideas that come to your mind with the more realistic ones, to rationalize the irrational dislike and irrational fear and irrational disgust to something new, to something foreign, to something strange that you're trying or that you are communicating with. You can also Google some of the ways. This topic is actually quite new, and as I have mentioned in the beginning, it is normally silenced because of the sensitive nature of the issue. Well, I hope that my presentation gave you some food for thought, and it will somehow help to the language professionals, to those who are involved in teaching language, and to those who are struggling with learning a new language, and open a new perspective in language learning. Thank you very much for your attention.